Wow, we have got some breaking news for Concord here. This is really unprecedented, not just for PlayStation history, certainly that, but really the games business overall. This was such a high-profile failure where the game has been out for less than 2 weeks. We know the story, a multi-million-dollar live service game from SIE, invested in the studio early on, did a partnership, then acquired the studio, and the game has not been doing well, obviously. Well, we just recently learned that they are taking the game offline in a few days, September 6th, and they are refunding all players of the game so far to really recalculate what they plan on doing with this game. So this was confirmed on the PlayStation blog, where it says an important update on Concord. So they say, and I quote here, "Concord fans, we've been listening closely to your feedback since the launch of Concord on PlayStation 5 and PC, and want to thank everyone who has joined the journey aboard the North Star." They go on to say, "However, while many qualities of the experience resonated with players, we also recognize that other aspects of the game and our initial launch did not land the way we intended. Therefore, at this time, we have decided to take the game offline beginning September 6th, 2024, and explore options, including those that will better reach our players. While we determine the best path ahead, Concord sales will cease immediately, and we will begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased the game on PS5 or PC. If you purchase the game for PlayStation 5 from the PlayStation Store or PlayStation Direct, a refund will be issued back to your original payment method." They also outline that for the Steam Store and Epic Games Store, that should be automatically processed. If you did buy the game physically on PS5 from other retailers, then they do say that for customers that bought from a retailer location, then refer to the refund process from the retailer that you purchased it from and obtain your refund that way. They are looking to make everybody whole on what is clearly a game that has been a massive failure. We actually had a story recently, we didn't even get to touch on this because LTPS didn't come up just yet, but we had analyst estimates of how well the game actually sold, right? Or how poorly the game actually sold, which the estimate there is around 25,000 copies, that being 10,000 on Steam and then 15,000 on PlayStation 5, which that admittedly I think is maybe higher than I would have guessed, although I guess it does make sense to a degree, at least just off the Steam numbers in general. That certainly was in the 10,000 range. I would have thought under 10,000, but we also saw that, or at least the anecdotal experiences that we've seen thus far, is that when you're actually playing the game on PlayStation 5, nearly all the lobby icons are PlayStation players. So there's been a lot of people that are primarily playing on PlayStation 5. But yeah, when it comes to the Steam peak player count, which is where everyone's still zoning in on that number, and it's middling at like 100 players at any given time, there's a problem here. The game is not going to be able to sustain itself if that's the player count so far. It's still so baffling, right? I mean, we've said this time and time again. Many others have said the same thing. And this game, I've never seen anything like it when it comes to just how much of I'll still stress this. It does feel like a dog pile. No doubt in my mind the game deserves a lot of it in the sense that, like, this is clearly what people don't want. It was very derivative and people have a problem with the characters, and so again, without a doubt, it does have a lot of criticisms levied against it, and there's also a lot of saturation with live service in general. I am not by any stretch making the suggestion that the game actually deserves so much more and it's just loud voices that are being angry at it, but it is to the point where there's just a lot of sort of jumping at the opportunity to sort of point and laugh at the game, which really amplifies the problem. Sony has not been able to control the narrative surrounding this game, and there's really no way to do that when the game is what it is. Again, the problem is Concord itself and what it inherently is, but I digress. The point is, this is a game that it wasn't going to be able to sustain itself for much longer than a few weeks, and it's done worse than conceivably other games that were like actually more like actual bad games on paper, right? The kind of titles where, again, like Redfall is a really great example here, where that game is just like poor. It's just not like a fun game. Sure, it's subjective, right? I'll always remind folks of that as well. But I think for some, the general consensus would probably be like, on paper, that game is problematic and just not very good. And that even that game was still able to debut at a few thousand players on Steam. So it's a really fascinating thing in a way to see how Concord has played out, but to see Sony do this, I think it really is unprecedented. Again, not just PlayStation history. There's very few high-profile AAA live service examples that have failed this monumentally bad. There's a few examples, but I think you get my point here. So now where do we go from here? I mean, the clear, obvious path would be making the game free to play, but as I said in our prior Concord conversation, like, that is not going to change anything. We have seen a number of live service games not just debut free-to-play, but let's say they do ask for an upfront fee and then they go to free-to-play after the fact. That's not going to change anything. So it does sound as though, granted, they're not saying a whole lot here. They're just flat out admitting the game did not land. We're refunding everybody, which is not a lot. So I think if there were ever a time to do it, now is the time to do it. And we're going to explore options. Now, you have to assume, one of the, again, obvious options is you're going to make it free to play. But the other option should very likely be you're going to have to fundamentally change what this game is. That was my theory before. You're going to have to. I'm just not sure if Sony's willing to bankroll that. In theory, it sounds like maybe they are looking to do something like that. The game is still technically sound. Like, that's the other aspect of Concord, which is like, yeah, it's obviously got a very big identity problem, and folks just have an inherent issue with the presentation, again, the characters, Guardians of the Galaxy at home, any sort of, this, that, and the other problems that people want to list off, and it doesn't seem like a very appealing game, but it's still a technically sound game, and I think there are options to explore to maybe try and give it a certain facelift, or maybe approach the gameplay perspective in a way that's maybe they lean into PvE elements or come up with different modes. Look, I'm just spitballing here, obviously. They've got a number of, I think, hurdles to really get over. I'm so curious as to what they're going to be willing to do and how far they'll take it to maybe give this game a second chance, right? When this game comes back, probably going to be free to play, but what else is it going to look like? If it just comes back free to play, that's not going to change anything, and that is still a pretty big failure on Sony's part, and unfortunately Firewalk's as well. So I guess we'll see what happens, and who knows how long this would take, but if anything, I will say this: they do have an opportunity here. I don't know if it's one that really has a decent shot at being successful, but this game initially went from, kind of being what was seen as a bland live service hero shooter game that then comes out and it gained a lot of attention in a negative manner, but it is very high profile now for the wrong reasons, but maybe it's one of those things where bad news is good news, right? Or bad press is still press. And maybe this is a way for them to now leverage it in a direction that would be more beneficial to the game if they do, let's say, radically go back to the drawing board and maybe are able to navigate this in a way where they come up with perhaps a better gameplay loop, or maybe they are looking to really completely give this game a whole new skin. I think financially that will not pencil out. I have no clue how committed they are to bankrolling this game and changing it for the better. I don't know, but the optimist in me says that they have a shot. I just don't think it's a very good one, even considering all options. And perhaps they come back and say, we take the L, and the game's just it's like lost media at that point. I don't know. It's crazy, right? So this is kind of my initial, very hot off the presses, the blog post was just put up kind of take. We'll see how the internet responds to this one, but it's absolutely this is, I didn't really think they would do this, to be honest. But then again, you have to make the players that did pay for the game, you have to make them whole. If you're going to try and completely change what this game fundamentally is for the better, and that is going to include free to play, you're going to have to do something for those that paid for the game up front. So it seems like they're initially doing the right thing, and we'll see what they come back with if they ever do come back. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. Can't wait to see the talk around this one, but I will see you all in my next video. You take it easy.